Laboratory. I'm Marquez, Dean for Global Engagement at Columbia University, and I'm so honored that you've joined us today for the second seminar in a seminar series focused on the Amazon we want, that invites experts to step into the collaboratory to discuss critical issues related to land use, geodiversity, climate, and demographic changes in the Amazon and their impacts. And now, before we begin this important discussion, and especially for those of you joining us for the first time today, I want to provide a bit of background about the Global Columbia Collaboratory. The Columbia University Center for Undergraduate Global Engagement, in partnership with Columbia Global Centers and Columbia World Projects, launched the Global Columbia Collaboratory in May of 2020 as a virtual exchange initiative to support students around the world. The collaboratory brings students, thought leaders, and educators together. It promotes cross-cultural communication and enhances skills and global competence to allow students to reflect, ideate, and collaborate to empower them to make a difference in the world. Students have participated from over 36 countries around the world, and they're drawn from all 3 undergraduate schools at Columbia, as well as visiting institutions. This summer, we have 48 students from 16 countries representing 10 universities. They're tuning in this morning from Asia, Europe, the Americas, including New York, Mumbai, Bogota, Tel Aviv, and Hamburg, just to name a few, using smartphones and laptops to access the collaboratory virtual exchange platform. Students form a community of global thinkers and problem solvers through participation in themed global seminars, such as our seminar today, as well as facilitated reflection, ideation, and collaboration activities. And as learnings and perspectives are shared across the collaboratory, students form project teams and receive funding to collaborate to tackle specific global issues and topics of interest. And the collaboratory serves as an incubator for bringing ideas into reality and promoting new projects and innovative solutions to global challenges. Now, we are thrilled that undergraduate students from all over the world have been actively engaged in the collaboratory every semester since it launched in 2020. And the program continues this summer with very important focus on the Amazon we want. So I encourage the global audience to submit questions to the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Again, I want to welcome everyone to this Global Columbia Collaboratory Seminar, and I want to thank all of our partners and our esteemed panelists. We're so pleased to be working directly with the Columbia Global Centers and many partners for these seminars. And at this time, I want to introduce Lauren Borido from the Science Center for the Amazon and the Sustainable Development Solutions, who will give some introductory remarks and introduce our panelists today. Lauren?
Thank you so much, Shannon. And again, on behalf of the Science Panel for the Amazon, welcome as well. We're so happy that all of you are here with us today. Today, we're going to hear from a number of the authors of part 1 of our report. Part 1 is all about the Amazon as a regional entity of the Earth system, and it covers exciting things like the evolution of Amazonian biodiversity over geologic time and its important contributions to atmospheric and climate systems at a regional as well as global scale. We have 3 wonderful speakers who are going to take us through all of these different facets of the Amazon today. First, we'll hear from Dr. Juan Manuel Guayasamin. He's an Ecuadorian professor at the Universidad de San Francisco de Quito and has published more than 90 papers on evolution, ecology, biogeography, and conservation of neotropical animals with a particular interest in amphibians. After Dr. Guayasamin, we'll hear from Dr. Germán Poveda, a professor at the Universidad Nacional de Colombia. He's an integral member of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, and was one of the scientists who were a member of that panel when they were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. Finally, we'll hear from our 3rd speaker, Dr. Tiago Cardoso. He's a professor of anthropology at the Federal University of Amazonas, where he coordinates the COLAR Laboratory on Anthropology of Life, Ecology, and Politics. And he's also a researcher at the NEAI, which studies the indigenous Amazon. And he'll talk to us as well about the evolution and diversity of Amazonian peoples. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to throw them into the Q&A field. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can after the presentations. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say who you are, where you're joining from. We're so glad that you're here with us. Without any more delay, I will turn it over to our first speaker, Dr. Guayasamin. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lauren. It's such a pleasure to be here I'm going to share my screen to start the presentation. Right now, I cannot share my screen. Can you give me a hand on that? Oh, yeah. Can everybody see the screen?
We can see it. And yes, now it's in presentation mode. Perfect.
Okay, fantastic, Lauren. All right, so it's really a joy to be able to share what we have done in the science panel for the Amazon in order to understand this very complex and beautiful topic that is Amazonian diversity. The panel, as you perhaps already know, is formed by hundreds and hundreds of scientists, also members of several communities, conservationists as well. But what I'm presenting was basically developed by one of the chapters, chapter 2, and these are the people that worked in the production of this work. As I have to say that the work of the group has been really outstanding. I have learned so much from every single person that I've worked with, and if one of the best things for me by far was actually meeting all these people and being able to work in this chapter. For all of you that are interested in reading the details of the chapter, I'm sure that you already have these links. There are 34 chapters, I think. Is incredible the amount of information that these chapters have. And right now we're going to just focus on biodiversity. And the first thing that I wanted to begin with is that when we're referring to Amazonian, we're actually talking about the whole Amazon basin. And that's an important point to make, because usually when you talk to people, including biologists, and you say Amazonian, most people are thinking about just this, the Amazon lowland rainforest. So we need to make that change in our heads, that we're actually talking about the whole basin. And when we talk about the basin and we try to understand all the numbers of species that have in this basin, it's really mind-blowing. It's we have more than 50,000 vascular plants, 1,500 butterflies, more than 400 mammals, more than 800 amphibians and reptiles, 1,300 birds, more than 3,000 fishes, and these numbers really are an underestimate of what we really have in the area. We have basically, in many groups, no idea of the true diversity that the Amazon basin holds. To give you an example of the magnitude of what we're talking about, in 1 hectare of tropical rainforest, we have more tree species than in the whole continent of Europe, or more tree species than what you have in the States and Canada combined. So it's really a fantastic system to work. For all of us that are interested in how species diversify and how species are generated, this is really the mecca, the site that we want to try to study to understand these processes. There are some slides that are from chapter 3, and these slides are very informative because they show you very clearly how these numbers, how the accumulative number of species in some of the vertebrate groups have changed through time. And you can see, for example, that in the rain for the birds, basically we had a more or less good understanding of the diversity by the 1800s, right? But in other groups, like fishes, for example, in fishes, you've seen that in the 20th century is when the description of the species really speeded up. And now you can see that it's almost reaching an exponential level of a species description. In other groups, like amphibians, the group that I mostly work with, we also have seen a big increase of species descriptions in the last decades. But again, this just transmits the point that we still need to describe a lot of the diversity that is in the Amazon basin. These slides just show the number of species described in some of the decades. So again, in birds, most of the species descriptions were done already in the 19th century. And in these recent years, we have relatively few species that are described every year. And that's basically because there's been a long interest on birds from a long time ago. So there's a history, a taxonomic history associated to these discoveries. For amphibians, you can see that more species have been described actually recently, and the trend is basically the same. Whenever we tackle a group and try to understand the diversity of the group, we always find that what we thought was perhaps one species that had a large distribution actually represents 3, 4, 5, even 10 or 20 species. So that's something that is a process that is going basically in every single group that people are studying. Whenever we see global patterns of diversity, you can actually notice that there are some patterns that repeat themselves. And in this map, you have a heat map of species diversity of vascular plants, and the areas in red and blue are the areas that have more species. So you see that the Amazon basin definitely has a really high number of species per area, as well as other areas, for example, as the Andes. The Andes is another important point for vascular plants. If you analyze the endemic plants of some countries, and here we have the data, for example, for Ecuador in green, Peru in red, and Brazil in this funny color, you can see that there are a lot of endemic plants that are endangered in every single country. But you can also notice that, for example, Ecuador has an incredibly high number of endemic species, even though Ecuador is a tiny country compared to, for example, Peru and Brazil. So these patterns should make us wonder why this is. Why do we have so many endangered species in such a small country as Ecuador? And we'll come back to this question a little bit later on. For amphibians, this is another heat map where the dark blue represents the higher number of species per area, and basically the same, right? You can see that tropical areas, especially in the Amazon, in the Western Amazonia, have more species than the rest. So the patterns on diversity tend to repeat themselves. Of course, there are exceptions, always exceptions on these things. But it's important to notice that overall, Amazonia is the most diverse area in the world. Again, if you take a look at endangered species, you see that those distributions where endangered species are found do not necessarily fall within the whole Amazon basin. You can see that the most endangered amphibians are actually located on the highlands. And again, we'll talk about that later on. So that's a very general overview of species diversity in Amazonia. Basically, the take-home message, as you've all probably already know, is that when you compare the numbers from different regions in the world, Amazonia almost always is the first place in terms of number of species per area. Now, a very important question is why is that? Why the Amazon basin has so many species compared to other regions? And one of the fundamental answers or evidence to support such a high number of species is, of course, energy, the number of net primary productivity that this area of the world has compared to other areas. So when you see photosynthetic activity in a map in January, as you are seeing right now, all these dark green areas are areas of very high productivity. If you go to April, and again in January, if you take a look at, for example, North America and Europe and Asia, almost no productivity or very low productivity, because of course you are in winter. In April, you start seeing some changes. You can start seeing some productivity in the northern areas of the world. In July, now you have the top productivity in the northern, have a lot of sunlight. But notice that from January, April, and July, you maintain constant light in the Amazon basin. And October, you have the same, a lot of light in the Amazon basin, and you start having, well, fall in the north, and again, a low productivity in the north. So here in the tropics, we have a lot of light all year long, and that means a lot of energy, and that energy supports this trophic change. If we have a lot of energy that is photosynthesized, that means that all the other layers are going to be able to have a food to basically thrive and have a living. The other aspect that is perhaps not very obvious is that if you're at any given point in the tropics, you're going to find that temperature is basically constant through the year. So in the right part of this slide, you see lines at different elevations, how temperature varies. So in red, you have a line at 2,000 meters in elevation, and you see that along the year, the temperature is more or less the same. The same happens at higher elevations. For example, this dark line here on the right is more or less constant in time, and again at even higher elevations, 3,600 meters, this light blue line shows the changes in temperature, and the temperature, of course, is lower because we're at higher elevation, but again, it's constant through the year. If you, on the left side, you have the changes in temperature in temperate areas, in temperate streams. And what you can see is that where you are in terms of elevation, you're gonna experience a lot of change that goes from more or less 20 Celsius degrees to a freezing point, to 0. And remember, this is a temperature taken in streams. So the organisms that live in temperate areas have to be adapted to this huge variation in terms of temperature, whereas tropical species can actually adapt to narrow areas with narrow variations in temperature. So this allows specialization, right? And if you add the layer of topographic diversity, so remember, this is the Amazon basin, and all these photos show the variation that we have in terms of topography in the basin. So we go from places like number 1, that's the Antisana volcano that has more than 5,000 meters in elevation. You go to basically level, and that represents a lot of ecological opportunity in order to diversify and adapt to these different environments. Also, even if we're, sorry,
I'm going to have to ask you to start to wrap up, please.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna fly. Also, in any given area, we also have heterogeneity, right? So these are photos of the Amazon lowlands, and we also have a lot of variation in terms of area that get flooded, areas that have clay as soil, and areas that have different types of soils. So how do species diversify? There's adaptation. Adaptation, that means ecological speciation, right? Like in these environmental gradients. But we also have allopathic speciation. And here we have these breaks in how species distribute because of local extinctions, or because some valleys get deeper. And because of that, we also have speciation that are not going together with niche shifts. Basically, all these different species can live in the same area, and this happens also because rivers can be big barriers, valleys can be barriers, and then all produce these different areas of endemisms. And some of these areas of endemism can repeat themselves. That means they can be common in some groups, but there's a lot of idiosyncratic endemism. That means that different groups have different areas where they are more common. The other important aspect is coevolution. When you start having a lot of species, you start having a lot of interactions. And these interactions sometimes mean that you create these partnerships with other species and co-evolve with them. One of the most beautiful examples on this regard are the leaf cutter ants that have this association with a fungus that they feed on, but the system is incredibly complex that has been worked with by Cameron Curry, and you have parasites that co-evolve, and also you have bacteria that co-evolve with that. Well, since I'm running out of time, just to say that species diversity in any particular area in the Amazon basin, especially, you have a lot of aspects that are integrated. You have speciation, adaptation, landscape, climatic changes, biological attributes, species interactions, and of course, many of those that also are dealing with extinctions. And extinctions, as you can map, might be very related to habitat destruction. So all these areas that here you see in red are areas that are being deforested. And of course, our focus should be in protecting these areas that are right now at very high risk. With that, I want to thank everybody, and I hope there's some time for questions.
We will definitely have time for questions. Perfect, exactly to the minute on time. Thank you, Dr. Guayasamin. We will move on immediately to our next speaker, Dr. Germán Poveda. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lauren. Can I share my screen?
You should also be able to share your screen, yes. Unless somebody needs to give you some permissions.
Let me see. I don't know if I'm sharing my screen.
I don't
at this
see
moment.
it yet. Oh, there we go. It's loading. Perfect. You're all set.
Thank you, Lauren. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here in today's session. So what I'm going to refer to today is the hydroclimatic services from the Amazon to South America and the impacts of deforestation. But I'll start by saying that Amazon is not only important for South America. The Amazon River Basin is one of the key tipping points of the climatic system of the entire planet Earth. So if we have in mind this importance, we're going to see how important is the Amazon rainforest and the Amazon River Basin for South America, but also to the world. Next, I am starting by this movie, this animation that shows the winds over South America, and this help us to understand how fly the rivers, how the aerial rivers fly over South America. These are the winds from around 750 meters above sea level, and as you can see, there is transport of humidity from the Atlantic Ocean to the Amazon River Basin. Let me start here again. There's humidity flowing from the North Atlantic Ocean to the Amazon River Basin, and all the way to the Andes Cordillera, and then all the way to southeastern South America. So these wind patterns transport large amount of moisture and water vapor to provide water in not only in the Amazon, but also in the Andes, many cities along the Andes, but also cities in southeastern South America. For instance, Sao Paulo and Buenos Aires can have influence from these aerial rivers transporting water from the northern Atlantic, tropical Atlantic Ocean through the Amazon Basin, through the Andes, and then to southeastern South America. So these stream flows or these wind flows patterns are very important to transport moisture all over South America to provide water to many cities and many regions in the whole continent. Here, what I'm going to show you is let me see. Yeah, this is a video resulting from a very sophisticated climatic model showing how important the Amazon River Basin is for the supply of water in entire South America. This model, of course, we cannot see water vapor, but in computer simulations, we can put colors on water vapor to provide a glimpse on how water vapor is transported in South America from the Amazon or from the Atlantic Ocean to the Amazon and then to the rest of the continent. Here, water vapor is represented in colors. Higher density or higher concentration of water vapor is in green and white. And here we are seeing an animation from December 2004 to March 2005. And as you can see, water vapor flows from the tropical Atlantic Ocean to the Amazon River Basin. Here, water is evapotranspired and rain several times until water vapor gets to the Andes Cordillera and then to the rest of the continent. Of course, the glaciers in tropical South America in the Andes gets water from the lowlands of the Amazon. And I said before, also southeastern South America gets water from the Amazon and from the Andes, and then to the southeast of the continent. So this is the way water vapor is transported all over South America to have water supply for many issues: human consumptions, agriculture, hydropower generation, etc. And as you can see here, this is very telling on the importance of the Amazon rainforest to have water vapor and, of course, water for the supply of the entire continent. And one of the things of this topic, or one of the things of this situation, important things is that evapotranspiration from the forest serve to feed rainfall in the Amazon River Basin itself. So as long as between 35 and 50% of rainfall in the Amazon Basin comes from local evapotranspiration from the local rainforest. This is called recycled rainfall. So the importance of recycling of rainfall recycle in the Amazon is very important. So if we cut the forest, we're going to cut this important feedback of evapotranspiration to feed rainfall down the wind in the Amazon River Basin. So as from here, you can start seeing how important it is to maintain the forest alive, the standing forest, and the problems that are of deforestation are causing to this integrity of a hydrological cycle in South America are very worrisome. Here you can see some more evidence of the importance of the Amazon to supply water for the rest of the continent. In these two plots of this slide, on the left, we are seeing the percentage of precipitation recycling in South America on the left from June to September, and on the right from December to March. And colors represent the amount of precipitation which is originated in local evapotranspirations. For instance, in these colors, yellow colors here, where yellow colors mean 50%. So in these pixels, 50% of precipitations comes from local evapotranspiration. And even in the Andes, as you can see here in the Andes, in green and blue, from June to September and from December to March, precipitation recycling gets to 80 or 90%. So even in the Andes, this precipitation recycling is very, very important. And this water comes from the lowlands of the Amazon River Basin. So here we can see how important the Amazon River Basin is to maintain the water cycle and the hydrological cycle of the whole tropical South America, which is very well described in this figure from a paper from Sem indicating how the deforestation destroys the cascade of water vapor and moisture downwind in tropical South America. Because if we understand the role of precipitation recycling and the role of evapotranspiration on rainfall down the wind, so we understand this cascade of moisture downwind. But if we destroy the forest, we're going to reduce the moisture of inflow from not only from the tropical Atlantic Ocean, but also in the Amazon itself, so that the reduction of moisture impacts a reduction of precipitation down the wind. So if we cut the forest, we're going to destroy this cascade of moisture down the wind in the Amazon and in tropical South America. Also, deforestation impacts very heavily on the hydrological cycle of the Andes, as I illustrate here in this cartoon, because as I said before, there is evapotranspiration and precipitation in the Amazon. The water vapor is transported by the winds to the Andes. Due to the orographic effect of the Andes, these winds cool here and precipitate and condense the water vapor to get precipitation along the Piedmont of the Andes. So there is a two-way feedback between the lowland Amazon and the Andes, because the lowland Amazon exports water vapor to the Andes, and the Andes export not only river flows, but also sediments and nutrients to the low-lying Amazon. So if we deforest the Amazon or even the Andes, we're going to destroy this extraordinary or marvelous feedback mechanism among the two regions. Many cities in the Andes get their water from the low-lying Amazon. For instance, Bogota, Quito, La Paz, even Lima, and hundreds of towns in the Andes get their water from the low-lying Amazon. So if we cut the forest, we are going to threaten the water supplies of these important cities in South America. This is another example of the importance of the forest in the low-lying Amazon to explain how rainfall distributes in the continent. For instance, this is a place in the Peruvian highlands, Yurimaguas, and as you can see here in this map, what you are seeing here is the percentage of precipitation that comes from the rest of South America. So, for instance, the rainfall that falls in Yurimaguas, 80% comes from this whole area in the Amazon River Basin. So, and on the left, you can see some kind of the same information. Also, and of course, this ratifies the importance of the low-lying Amazon to supply water for many cities in the Andes. This is the so-called precipitation watershed or precipitation shed of this place in the Peruvian Andes. And you can see that in any place along the Andes, west of the Amazon, of course, the Amazon has its headwaters in the Andes, and all those places get the water from the low-lying Amazon, driven by the winds in these aerial rivers that I showed you before. And of course, deforestation destroys the so-called biotic pump of atmospheric moisture exerted by forests. This is a new theory that had been put forward by two Russian scientists, Makarieva and Gorshkov, that said that moisture evaporating from the forest here condenses and disappears from the gas phase, no longer water vapor, because it gets converted in liquid water through condensation. And this condensation process lowers the surface atmospheric pressure with respect to the ocean. And then there is a gradient or a difference in sea level pressures between the forest and the ocean, so that the forest suck moisture from the ocean to the continental land. So these mechanisms of biotic pump of atmospheric moisture can be destroyed by deforestation, and this can be very threatening for the entire continent, and as I said, for the world, because of the importance of the Amazon rainforest. And not only in the hydrologic cycle and the climatic services, but also in air quality all over South America, as we can see in this animation, how the fires in 2019 distributed carbon monoxide across South America. And of course, this has tremendous impacts on air quality, and of course, in carbon monoxide emission. These are very important problems, not only for human health, because these particulates are very linked or are linked with cardiovascular disease and pulmonary diseases, etc. So this is another problem associated with deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. Of course, the evidence of deforestations are very large. Here we can see an animation of deforestation in tropical South America from 2001 and 2021. The red points, as you can see here from the Global Forest Watch, are the regions who have been deforested in the last 20 years, not only in the Brazilian Amazon, but also in the Amazon of the other countries in South America. We witnessed this destruction during the 2019 and 2021 fires, which has been absolutely not only threatening, but scandalous, I would say, because of Mr. Bolsonaro dismantled the control and deforestation programs and measures in Brazil, as in spite of his greenwashing at the COP26, deforestation has grown during his time in Brazil's presidencies. But also, and of course, deforestation is not only restrained to the Brazilian Amazon. Here we can see some photos from deforestation in the Colombian Amazon. As you can see, this is an ongoing process, very worrisome, very concerning, and of course, impacting all these hydroclimatic services that I have been talking to you previously.
Dr. Poveda, Dr. Peppa, please.
Yeah, this is,
Thanks.
I think this is my last one. And of course, I can remember you that deforestation also contributes 20% to climate change, because climate change is associated with the burning of fossil fuels, of course, but also 20% of climate change is associated with deforestation. And also deforestation is at the root of the pandemics of COVID-19, because COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease, which is favored by the contacts between humans and wildlife, and deforestation is increasing this contact. So that's the reason why we created the science panel for the Amazon, and we produced this fantastic document, putting this problem on the spot for the people to know how important is the Amazon, what are the perils of deforestation, but also what is the solution space to get out of the crossroad. So far, I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Poveda. We will turn to our third and final speaker, and then after that, we're going to open it up to questions. So I'm just going to remind people to please use the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen. If you have questions, we're going to take them all three speakers at once. Dr. Cardoso, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Bom dia a todos e a todas. Vou fazer minha apresentação em português. Deixa eu aqui abrir o slide.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you one more time then. I also want to remind people that there's interpretation available at the bottom of your screen. It's a little globe icon. You can choose Portuguese or English. I'm sorry, please proceed.
Está aparecendo o compartilhamento?
Yes.
Yes. Bom.
I'm sorry, we can see them, but could you put them in the presentation mode? We're seeing them in the smaller, like editing mode.
So, one moment, please. It's okay?
No, we're still seeing them in the edit mode. I think you need to do the like start slideshow.
One moment, please.
Take your time. Sorry if you have a dual display. I know sometimes it can be tricky to get it set up.
It's okay now?
No, now we can't see anything. I think you have to reinitiate the share.
Yes. Okay. And now it's okay?
Now you're screen sharing, but you're sharing the Zoom window.
Oh.
If you want, we can try one more time, or if you want to email them to either myself or Kiki or Duda, one of us can also share them for you if that's easier.
Yes, I sent an email to Kiki.
Do we want to try
to show?
Yep, absolutely. We'll give her a second to pull it up.
Bom, já
Kiki,
posso ir
maybe-
começando
I was going to
enquanto
say,
o
if you could
slide
just
vai.
unmute for 1 second to tell us you're working on it.
Yeah, I don't see them in my inbox.
Okay. Could you send them one more time?
Sorry. Hi, Tiago. I'm gonna speak in Portuguese. Tiago,
Ok.
você pode mandar aqui pelo Zoom para mim e eu coloco para você, que é mais fácil. Tem uns 3 pontinhos do lado no chat. Se você vai no chat, tem 3
Aham.
pontinhos e aí você pode colocar um arquivo. E aqui onde tem para, coloca o meu nome, Isabela, que aí vem só para mim o documento.
Essa função não aparece para mim.
Não aparece para você? Você consegue mandar para o
Não.
meu e-mail rapidinho? Estou te escrevendo aqui.
Consigo. Deixa eu ver. Enviei.
Obrigada, já vou colocar.
Bom, acho que já posso começar, enquanto vai abrindo o slide. Ok. Thank you, Isabelle. Bom, minha apresentação vai ser sobre povos da Amazônia, né? Ela está baseada em 3 capítulos do relatório do painel científico da Amazônia, capítulo 8, capítulo 9, capítulo 10. Eu fiz uma síntese, né, dos principais pontos de cada capítulo, e cada capítulo corresponde a um ponto de vista sobre os povos da Amazônia, né? O primeiro capítulo, que é o capítulo 8, é sobre o ponto de vista da arqueologia, da etnobotânica e da história ecológica sobre os povos da amazônicos no período pré-colonial ou pré-conquista. O segundo capítulo é sobre a história, né, mais recente, no período colonial e pós-colonial. E o terceiro, nós vamos falar um pouco sobre a situação etnográfica, diríamos, ou antropológica, ou atual, dos povos aqui da Amazônia. Quando a gente está falando de povos da Amazônia, é bom que a gente trata no plural, né? A gente está falando de quase 1,5 milhão de pessoas que se auto-identificam como indígenas no bioma amazônico, né? São mais de 380 povos, né? Seja no Brasil, Peru, Colômbia, Venezuela, Bolívia, Equador, Suriname, Guiana. E além dos povos indígenas, nós temos também a presença de povos afrodescendentes, né? Que também estão organizados muitas vezes em comunidades, como comunidades quilombolas, né? Ou maruns, né? Ou palenque, dependendo do lugar onde é falado, né? Se auto-identifica. Pode passar o slide, por favor. Então, esse mapa, ele traz a situação, digamos assim, os sítios arqueológicos na Amazônia, no bioma amazônico, né? No período pré-conquista, né? Esses sítios arqueológicos, ele evidencia uma presença demográfica muito ampla, né, e de grande extensão na Amazônia, né? Esses aqui são sítios arqueológicos com presença de diversos atributos, né, sejam de cerâmica, sejam artefatos na paisagem, né, sejam transformações no solo, né, e que evidenciam uma ação intensiva humana na paisagem amazônica, né? Apesar dos sítios arqueológicos estarem amplamente distribuídos na Amazônia, o que evidencia uma ampla densidade populacional, nós temos também uma presença entre os interflúvios, né? Numa uma rede de caminhos, né, que conectam esses lugares no período pré-colonial, né? Então, a Amazônia, ao invés de ser um vazio demográfico, né, quando na chegada dos europeus, a Amazônia era densamente povoada, né? Então, esse povoamento, por favor, o próximo slide, ele também gerou uma transformação ativa da paisagem, né? Os povos indígenas que habitavam a Amazônia no período pré-conquista não eram simplesmente passivos à ação do meio ambiente ou da natureza, mas sim agentes ativos em sua transformação, né? Esse capítulo traz alguns exemplos, né, cronológicos, como está aqui nesse slide, dessa transformação e suas consequências materiais, né? A primeira, que está ali presente desde o início da ocupação humana na Amazônia, trata, né, de 12 mil anos atrás, fala das pinturas, né, das pinturas rupestres, né, das pinturas nas pedras e na arte produzida pelos povos que aqui habitavam. Uma segunda evidência da materialização dessa agência humana seria a domesticação de plantas, né, com a criação da agrobiodiversidade. Uma ampla agrobiodiversidade de plantas que são úteis até hoje em dia, né, pelos povos contemporâneos da Amazônia. Mais três, né, evidências materiais dessa presença intensiva, humana na Amazônia e sua transformação da paisagem seria pela monumentalidade, né, ou seja, transformação de terras e transformações geológicas, né, na Amazônia, né, como os chamados geoglifos, né, ou as montanhas, os morros, né, para habitação ou para produção agrícola, que tem presente, por exemplo, nos Llanos Módios, na Bolívia, né, ou taludes, né, no Rio Solimões. Tem também a produção cerâmica, né, como outro exemplo de transformação material, e as terras pretas de índio, né, que seria uma produção de um solo antropogênico, exatamente nesses sítios arqueológicos, né, um solo de alta fertilidade, né, e que abrigou aldeias, né, e foi produzido ao longo de séculos, né, de coevolução entre os humanos com a paisagem. Por favor, pode passar. Pode passar o slide, por favor. Então, esse slide ele traz assim algumas plantas. O slide anterior ele traz um mapa, né, com algumas plantas e o centro de domesticação, né, e hiperdominância de algumas espécies em um contexto arqueológico, né? Então você vê algumas plantas muito importantes hoje para os povos da Amazônia, mas também não só, né, para o contexto da agricultura global, né, como a mandioca, né, o próprio guaraná, né, o pequi, algumas frutas como o cacau, né, a batata doce, que foram criadas e domesticadas também num amplo, né, dimensão temporal da relação entre os povos indígenas e a paisagem e as plantas, né? Então, a presença, pode passar, por favor, por gentileza? A presença humana, né, pré-colonial na Amazônia era uma presença, segundo a arqueologia, extensa, né, ao longo de todos os rios e tributários, igarapés, né, mas também uma presença intensiva, uma presença de grande dimensão demográfica, mas também de um agenciamento da transformação da paisagem e de plantas, né? Então, entender a presença humana hoje na Amazônia passa por compreender também essa dimensão arqueológica. Pode passar, por favor. Durante a colonização e a conquista, nós tivemos um processo, né, um largo processo de violência colonial, né, com o genocídio dos povos que aqui habitavam, né? Habitavam aqui a Amazônia, e também com um processo que a gente pode chamar aqui de etnocídio, né? Que é o impacto da colonização e da ocupação europeia na Amazônia sobre as pessoas, né? Ou seja, uma perda demográfica, né? Muitos indígenas sucumbiram a doenças, a vírus, bactérias, né? Que eram, de certa forma, novos para eles. Então, você teve uma depopulação, né? De forma bem grave, bem séria. Ao mesmo tempo, você teve uma perda, né? Uma perda de cultura, diríamos assim, uma perda de conhecimento, né? Pelo processo de evangelização, criação de missões religiosas, que tiveram um impacto também enorme na vida dessas pessoas. Pode passar, por gentileza? Essa questão histórica, né, do período colonial, pode passar, por favor. Ela está muito presente no capítulo 9, né, do relatório, né, que traz alguns elementos para se pensar a história humana, né, dos povos da Amazônia, como uma história que se entrelaça com o período colonial, né? Pode passar o slide, por favor, por gentileza? Pode passar 2 slides. Próximo. Que se entrelaça com... Pode passar, por favor. Com o período colonial, né? Com uma história da ocupação europeia. E essa história da ocupação europeia partia do princípio de que os povos... de que a Amazônia era um grande vazio demográfico, né? Primeiramente, né? E era fronteira, né? Fronteira de ocupação, uma fronteira a ser descoberta e ocupada, né? Essa ideia de vazio, de fronteira, teve um impacto muito grande nas populações que aqui habitavam, né? A partir do princípio que essas populações não teriam direitos, né? Nem a existência, né? Enquanto povos, e nem a existência enquanto habitantes de um território, né? Habitantes de um local, de uma região habitada secularmente por esses povos, né? Então, isso teve um impacto enorme, né? Mas a gente não pode compreender esse processo de ocupação não apenas como perda, né? Como num certo sentido pessimista, né? De fim, né? Dos povos daqui da Amazônia. O que a gente vê aqui do período colonial, houve também muita resistência, né? Houve muitas ações e práticas dos povos indígenas e dos povos afrodescendentes no sentido de manter seus territórios e manter seus modos de vida, né? Então, essas práticas e essas ações para manter seus modos de vida resulta, né, na atual configuração étnica e demográfica da Amazônia atual, né? Pode passar, por favor. Por favor, pode passar mais um, por favor. Isso aqui foi tratado, né? Esse modo de vida, né? Dos atuais povos da Amazônia foi tratado no capítulo 10, no qual fui um dos autores, em que a gente escreveu sobre essas interconexões contemporâneas entre a diversidade biológica e cultural dos povos da Amazônia e seus ecossistemas. Pode passar, por favor? Entender a configuração atual, né, dos povos da Amazônia, que a gente está falando, como eu falei, né, são 385 povos indígenas, mais ou menos, né, até hoje autorreconhecidas, povos afrodescendentes, que se organizam, sejam nas cidades, no meio urbano, ou nas florestas, nas beiras dos rios, né? Compreender seu modo de vida, seus conhecimentos, o que a gente está chamando de uma diversidade biocultural, né? Compreender toda essa diferença, essa diversidade de povos, implica o estudo tanto dos seus conhecimentos locais, né, dos seus conhecimentos sobre a paisagem, sobre a biodiversidade, como também seu modo de gerir, de administrar seus territórios, né, o que a gente pode estar chamando aqui de uma governança local ou de uma governança indígena, né? Essa governança envolve a articulação de múltiplas atividades, né, como a pesca, a caça, a agricultura, em geral, agroflorestal, né? O manejo cotidiano da floresta, com o uso de plantas e animais em diversos ecossistemas, né? E esse manejo, que é um manejo histórico, né? Um manejo que perpassa o período pré-conquista, vem pela história colonial, e hoje ela vai sendo feita com outras, obviamente, características, né? Com atualizações tecnológicas, atualizações de conhecimento, mas que mantém suas singularidades, né? Por isso que a gente pode falar de povos, né? No plural, né? Povos da Amazônia, né? Não é um povo indígena no singular, mas são povos indígenas, cada um com sua diferença. Essas diferenças conformaria o que a gente chama de uma diversidade biocultural, né? Uma diversidade que pode ser vista também nas linguagens, né? E nos modos de vida que articulam, como eu já falei, cidade e mundo rural. Pode passar, por favor. Então é importante, quando a gente fala de povos da Amazônia e o manejo, né, hoje da biodiversidade, a gente está falando de uma articulação, né? Uma articulação entre diversas paisagens e práticas e modos de conhecimentos. A gente está falando aqui de articulação entre áreas urbanas, terra, água e o mundo rural, a floresta, mas também nós estamos falando da articulação entre a relação com os animais, a pesca e os sistemas de aquacultura, né? Agricultura de corte e queima, mas articulada com agroflorestas, e nós estamos falando também de coleta, extrativismo e manejo de recursos, né? Geralmente feitas por unidades familiares organizadas em sistemas de parentesco muito próprios, né? A gente está falando quando a gente fala de diversidade de povos na Amazônia, a gente está falando de diversidade de organização social, de diversidade de cosmologias, né? Ou seja, de formas de pensamento sobre o mundo, né? Sobre o planeta, sobre a terra, sobre a floresta, né?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Ok. Mais um slide, por gentileza, ou dois. Já concluindo um pouco, né, para finalizar, é importante dizer que hoje esses povos estão organizados, né, em múltiplas formas de territorialidade. Esses territórios são reconhecidos, né, pelos respectivos direitos constitucionais de seus países, seja no Peru, na Colômbia, no Brasil, né, no Equador, né? Então a gente tem hoje quase 45% do bioma amazônico hoje é protegido, né, pelas áreas protegidas de comunidades e povos tradicionais, né, e também de unidades de conservação, né? Aqui no Brasil, esses territórios são dois grandes territórios, que são as terras indígenas e os quilombos, né, que configuram uma grande mosaico de territórios de povos e comunidades tradicionais reconhecidos pelos seus constituições, tá? Ao mesmo tempo, a gente sabe que esses povos estão em ameaça, né, constante, e agora essas ameaças elas estão hoje mais intensas, com seus territórios sendo invadidos e os recursos florestais e aquáticos né, e animal também sendo utilizados por pessoas, por grupos de fora de seus territórios, né, o que constitui hoje talvez a grande ameaça aos povos indígenas da Amazônia, né? Só para finalizar, uma conclusão, eu peço por gentileza para ir para o último slide, né? O último, mais um. Pronto, só para algumas conclusões, né? Do ponto de vista arqueológico, o Amazonas era habitado por muitos povos, né, em grande número, antes da conquista europeia. Esses povos manejavam a terra e a floresta, criando paisagens bioculturais. Do ponto de vista histórico, é marcado, né, a história da Amazônia e seus povos é marcada por diversos ciclos econômicos de ocupação colonial, mas também por muitas histórias de vida e de resistência das pessoas que habitam a Amazônia. E do ponto de vista antropológico, a Amazônia hoje é habitada por muitos grupos de afro-indígenas, seja no mundo rural ou urbano, que governam seus territórios através de seus conhecimentos e cosmovisões. Eu peço desculpas aqui por ter me atrapalhado nos slides e pelo tempo que eu passei, e agradeço a presença de todos.
Thank you so much, and our apologies as well on the slides. I wish we could have helped more and faster. Our next segment of this program is the Q&A, and I'm going to ask our admin staff to give permissions to the two students who are going to ask questions on camera to add them as panelists and ask them to get connected as soon as they can, while I turn it back to Shannon to introduce the students.
Thank you, Lauren. And wow, this is really an amazing dialogue, quite insightful and informative. So now I have the distinct pleasure to introduce two students who will be asking live questions today. I see they are joining us. Our first student is Manuela Oliveira. Manuela is from Belém in the state of Pará, Brazil. This semester, she will complete her bachelor's degree in law at the Pará University Center. Manuela is a member of the Latin American Climate Lawyers Initiative for Mobilizing Action. Her research interests are focused on environmental impacts in the Amazon region, promoted by the absence of demarcation of indigenous lands in the state of Pará. Welcome, Manuela. Manuela?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you see me, by the way?
You're welcome you to turn on your camera if you can. We don't see you presently.
I can't do this.
Okay, we can hear.
Oh, no, I think I, okay.
If your camera's not working, feel free to just speak. Oh, voila, there you are.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now? Is everything fine? I'd like to first thank you for the opportunity, and I'm too glad to be here listening and learning with you. It's really important to me. Well, my question for the panelists is related to the impacts caused by illegal mining. Last year, illegal mining generated an impact in Brazil and the world, and after the emergency of numerous mining barriers in the middle of the Madeira River. It's located in the state of Amazonas, in the middle of Brazilian Amazon region, and mainly affecting the river, the people living around it, and also the climate. So unfortunately, we depend on ore because it's present in our daily lives, in the light we consume, in the cars, in cell phones, watches, everything. But beyond the clear need for federal government and intervention and supervision, well, my question is, what can we do to consume less, or at least consume it legally? Thank you again.
Anyone want to take that question on? Any of our panelists, you're welcome to provide some insight.
It's a very complicated question. I can try to perhaps present a perspective, and then I'm sure that either Thiago or Germán can add some ideas. But as you said, one of the drivers of all both legal and illegal mining is that we consume. We're now talking through our computers, and we all have our phones very nearby to our heart. So it's complicated, right? But definitely one aspect that we can all improve is how much we consume, and this is an issue that of course is centered on the higher economic stratum of people, those that have the ability, and they do it all the time, to basically replace things every year, right? So now I have this computer, next year I a slightly better model, and I buy that one, and this is my iPhone whatever 7, and then next year I buy the newer version. So this is really problematic, and it's cultural. It's becoming a real issue all over the world, and I think that at least we as educators, we do have a role to play there. We all work at universities. We all have interactions with a lot of students. Some of them actually, the higher levels of consumerism that I'm seeing in electronics are driven by young people that have the economic means to actually replace their electronics every 1 or so. I think that's a big component of this issue. Try to somehow insert this conscience about the lack of the need of replacing things so often, right? I have my same computer and my same phone for 7 years, and it's not the best, it's not the fastest, but I work with that, and I think that most of us can do our daily activities with these. The other part of the question, the illegal, how to buy legal or illegal, that I think is it should be, of course, our concern, and we as citizens can put some pressure on that. But at the end, it goes down to tracking the sources of all these minerals, and that's not easy, right? That's not easy at all, and it requires a governmental involvement and also citizen monitoring. But that's a very complex issue. Here in Ecuador, we have a lot of illegal mining, and since it's all over the place and the scales are incredibly different, tackling that is a problem. Actually, big scale and company-driven mining is actually easier to monitor because the government can do something about it and society can do something about it. But yeah, that one is a very complex issue. I don't know if Germán and Tiago have other thoughts on that. Thanks for the question, Manuela.
Yeah, I would like to add to Juan's answer that, of course, we need to go to the root of the problem. For instance, illegal mining, of course, is causing a lot of deforestation and also river water pollution. In Colombia, the problem is huge with mercury, and you know what the problems of mercury for the human brain and for the fishes. So, but the fundamental problem is that Juan Manuel has talked about the need to stop hyper consumerism, and I agree with that fully, because if you know that in any cell phone that we have, there are 65 elements of the periodic table in a cell phone. There is no planet that can provide such amount of infinite resources. Our planet is finite. We have realized that, and resources are not infinite. So we need to stop this hyper-consumerism that is governing our lives today. And of course, the basic fundamental problem is that the economic system and the economy as a science and also as a system rewards deforestation and pollution and illegal mining because of their short-term benefits, but ignores the value of environmental and ecosystem services and life support systems that are provided, for instance, for the Amazon rainforest or for the Amazon River Basin, as I showed before. So to get out of the problem and to overcome these crossroads at which we are now, we need to abandon this bad and dishonest economy that rewards pollution and deforestation. We need to apply serious environmental economics, for instance, estimating and involving the gross ecosystem product, as China has started to do so, as the United System is now fostering or favoring the existence of national accounts that should include other indicators different than the gross domestic products, like the gross economic product, as I said before. And of course, the solution passes to the bioeconomy. This is one of the solutions that we are suggesting or proposing for the Amazonian region. This bioeconomy is an economy based on biodiversity. The tremendous amount of non-timber products from natural forests, like new foods, new medicines, new materials, new cosmetics, new molecules, new dyes, odorants, flavorings. The products derived from bioengineering, products derived from biomimetics are going to be very fundamental for the creation of patents and new discoveries to create value from these natural products of the Amazon. So this is the only way to, or this is one of the ways to break up the permanent tension between economic development and sustainable development.
Wow, thank you for those amazing answers. And thank you, Manuela, for your question. Our second student is Jessica Chang. Jessica is from New Jersey, USA, and is a rising junior at Columbia University in the dual BA program with Sciences Po Paris, studying political science and sustainable development. She is interested in the intersection between the environment, public policy, corporate social responsibility, and environmental, social, and corporate governance. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, thank you for being here today. I can try turning on my camera, but I have bad connection, so I might need to turn it off. But I have two questions. So my first question is, with the diversity of the Amazon region, how does policy translate into concerted action towards sustainable development throughout the Amazon? And my second question is related to this. It's with the Amazon spanning between various countries, how do regional power dynamics play into collective action on promoting Amazonian sustainable development? And how do these power dynamics either help or harm policy actions driven by scientific data? Lastly, what are the existing difficulties in translating scientific research into Amazon-wide policy decisions? Let me know if I need to repeat any of the questions or like clear anything up.
Thank you. Herman or Juan or Thiago?
I can try to answer part of the first question because it's the only one that I remember. But thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so we as scientists or daily work is generating information, right? We generate information. We try to communicate in a clear, objective way what are the diversity patterns that we find, and yes, that's important. But I more and more I'm convinced that most of the times that's not enough, right? That's not enough. It falls short because we lack the ability and the power to actually reach the people that actually make decisions on public policy regarding conservation. And Ecuador right now is an interesting, I think it's an interesting case because we have some problems that I think are common for most Latin American countries. First, governments here usually don't do their job as they should, right? So if there's any environmental issue, usually the governments do nothing about it, right? We know that there's deforestation, we know that there's contamination, we know that there are big mining companies, we know that there's illegal deforestation, but usually action to stop all those things. But thanks to a much more active society now, and and also I think help thanks to these easier ways to communicate things that are happening near all of us. There is a lot of pressure from the society for the first time. I think that for the first time we can see in real time what are the problems that are happening in Colombia, in Brazil, here in Peru. And we can also see videos, and we can have maps as the deforestation maps that Herman showed us, basically on real time. And that creates pressure. So that's one very good thing. In my experience, unfortunately, governments respond to pressure, and the pressure that people can provide has been very, very meaningful in many aspects. And the other thing that actually I think is tied to this is that there's been some developments in the legislations of countries. Ecuador now in its constitution recognizes that nature is subject to rights from a legal point of view. And giving rights to nature at the constitutional level, as is in Ecuador, has facilitated many protection actions favoring nature. So there are some very serious cases in this couple of years where scientists and NGOs and communities have worked together to actually tackle specific problems where, for example, mining has threatened some of the most diverse we have in the Andes. And we have been able to actually stop those mining concessions with the basis of protecting nature and based on the Constitution, right? Use the Constitution as a tool. This development, this development in terms of the legislation, and I think many countries are having parallel it's in their constitutions. I think it's going to be a very powerful tool if it goes together with a very active community and social networking. If we tied all these things together, for the very first time, we're going to actually be able to monitor what's happening around us and put some pressure on the governments to actually stop some of these actions that in many cases are illegal. So yeah, that's one of the side of the answer that I thought it might be interesting, and I think that now Thiago has some other things to do to say. Thanks, Jessica, for your questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Oi, Jéssica. Tá
Yes.
com a tradução? Jéssica, acho que sua pergunta ela é bem relevante, porque ela fala que é o seguinte, que hoje as cadeias de suprimento, né, globais de commodities na Amazônia, ela não respeita as fronteiras, né, ela é transfronteiriça, né? Toda a cadeia de commodities, né? Ela responde a projetos de integração latino-americana, né, que agrega, né, projetos econômicos de larga escala, né, que não respondem muitas vezes a valores locais, né, mas sim a valores do mercado global, né? Isso gera, obviamente, uma intensificação econômica, assim, de destruição de impacto de larga escala, que vai do consumo à produção, né? Talvez a gente possa pensar também aqui, e talvez eu acho que nós, cientistas, né, vocês sejam um pouco envergonhados, né, para tratar disso, mas das nossas alianças também serem feitas de forma transfronteiriça, né? E em vez de, muitas vezes a gente fica muito preso aos nossos estados nacionais, né? Talvez seja a hora de não só uma aliança intercontinental, né, de quem faz ciência, seja ciências humanas ou ciências biológicas, né, ou físicas, mas também uma aliança com os movimentos sociais da Amazônia, né? Então, acho que esses movimentos sociais, hoje, já estão atuando de forma transfronteiriça, né? E esses movimentos sociais, de certa forma, em aliança com a ciência, eu acho que tem um potencial grande aí de enfrentamento, né, a essa cadeia de suprimento que é avassaladora, mas também para a criação de novas configurações sociais, econômicas, né, de novos projetos, né? Esses projetos não têm como ser presos às fronteiras, não tem como falar da Amazônia enquanto um Estado-nação, né? A gente tem, obviamente, as legislações nacionais, mas é necessário que as alternativas sejam interconectadas, que sejam latino-americanas, intercontinentais, né? Eu vejo um pouco dessa forma.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. I know we are coming close to time, but we have a bunch of questions that I think are very interrelated and interesting. So I would like to put these to our panel briefly. All of these touch upon Indigenous issues and particularly linkages between Indigenous people and science and conservation. So what are some ways to involve Indigenous communities in the creation of knowledge and link them to research? Is there any interest to incorporate Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous ways of seeing into education for non-Indigenous Brazilians? how much attention is being given to the Amazonian indigenous peoples and local communities, and how successful or efficient is their input in actually changing things. And then finally, a question that I think ties it all together. Would you agree that the Amazon can only be conserved and protected by its indigenous communities? And those questions come from a number of people: Stefan Kepler, Amy Ward, Esther De Paula Garcia, and Julia Pastic. So thank you, all of you, for these great questions. This will be our sort of final question to the panel, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
I think that the best person to answer this question would be Tiago, right?
Please go ahead then, Tiago, please go ahead.
Deixou a pergunta mais complicada para mim, né? The more complicated for me. Bom, acho que são muitas perguntas, né? Eu vou tentar ser muito sintético. Eu acho, primeiro, assim, eu acho que a pergunta poderia ser ao contrário, né? Como nós, cientistas ou ativistas, podemos nos envolver com os conhecimentos indígenas e suas práticas, né? Não só envolver os conhecimentos, os indígenas, os povos indígenas, no nosso conhecimento científico, que, de certa forma, pode ser uma outra forma de colonização, né? Eu acho que é uma relação de duas vias. Nós não temos comunidades tradicionais da Amazônia, são muito ricos e importantes para a conservação da biodiversidade e da paisagem amazônica. Mas também nós não temos dúvida de que o conhecimento científico que hoje é produzido também é muito importante, né, para a conservação da biodiversidade e das paisagens. Então, assim, eu acho que a gente está pensando no envolvimento, numa abertura da ciência para os pressupostos cosmológicos e pelos conhecimentos indígenas, mas também dialogar com os povos indígenas no sentido mais simétrico, né, de levar o conhecimento científico no sentido de colocar em diálogo, né? Não de haver, né? Eu acho que aí sim a gente tem um terceiro conhecimento, que é um conhecimento que vem do diálogo e do envolvimento mútuo, né? Do mútuo reconhecimento dos dois conhecimentos como conhecimentos importantes, conhecimentos diferentes, mas conhecimentos relevantes para a conservação. E aí, respondendo à última pergunta, eu não acho que só os povos indígenas têm essa obrigação e essa responsabilidade, ou que só os povos indígenas e as comunidades locais seriam responsáveis por conservar e proteger a floresta amazônica, né? Eu acho que temos que pensar, né? Claro que eles já estão fazendo isso, né? Já estão contribuindo com esse papel, de certa forma, né? Em vários contextos de dificuldades de enfrentamento, né? Mas eu acho que alianças são necessárias, a ciência é importante. Territórios, unidades de conservação pública, que não são territórios indígenas, né? Parques nacionais, reservas biológicas, são também importantes territórios para preservação e conservação, né? Assim como muitas propriedades, né? Muitos proprietários de terra que estão envolvidos também na conservação. Então, acho que a conservação da Amazônia, ela é uma meta de todos que estão, né? Eu acho que é uma meta global, ela é um objetivo global, ela tem que estar na agenda de todos, né? Assim como o clima, assim como a proteção do Ártico, a proteção da Amazônia também tem que ser a proteção de todos. E isso envolve o apoio aos territórios, aos povos indígenas que estão aqui no chão da Amazônia, né? Enfrentando com seus corpos, né, e seus territórios o que está acontecendo hoje de devastação.
Perhaps I could add some other idea to what Tiago has said. Of course, I fully agree that we need to recognize, we need to include, and we need to involve the ancestral environmental knowledge in not only in the environmental discussion, but also in the environmental education of our basic curriculum. So in primary, secondary, and of course university education, we need to include this knowledge into the environmental discussion. And Of course, in the science panel for the Amazon, we have several chapters in which we have several co-authors from indigenous peoples that have contributed tremendously to the diagnostic and the solution space to avoid this problem. So I need that we Western scientists, so to speak, should be less arrogant, and we need to recognize and include their knowledge and in a horizontal way in order to understand and to solve the environmental problems that we are facing today, not only in terms of deforestation, but also in climate change, in biological extinction that we are creating as humans. We are creating the 6th massive biological extinction. So we need to solve all those problems, and their knowledge and their wisdom is fundamental for us to solve this problem in a combined way with the Western science, so to speak. This fundamental knowledge from indigenous peoples and our ancestors are very fundamental to get out of this situation.
Any final reflections from Juan?
Well, no, I think that Tiago and Germán have answered the questions. It's such a complex issue. Conservation needs actors, as many actors as possible. I agree with Tiago that not only indigenous communities have the responsibility of this large-scale conservation, because right now the Amazon basin, a lot of actors. It has mestizos, it has indigenous communities, but also it has cities involved, even large cities like Manaus. So we need a much larger and effective also approach. And some of the main threats also are linked to violence. So it's not only deforestation and it's not only mining, that those activities sometimes bring violence to the areas, and we've seen how so many environmental activists have actually lost their lives in these processes. So it's very complex, and of course governments have a big responsibility on this issue. Need to provide some security for all the people that are involved in conservation activities. I'm so happy about the results in Colombia in this last election, because it actually opens up a new window of hope for people that actually have been working on the land with environmental issues. Francia Marquez is such an amazing and important, influential person. I really have high hopes for the processes that Colombia can lead through Francia. But yeah, very complex in many aspects.
Thank you so much. And I think that's a very important point you made. There are a number of places in the report where it again emphasizes that Latin America is the most dangerous place to be either an environmental or human rights activist. And this is particularly a threat against the lives of indigenous and local communities. We are unfortunately a little bit over time, and it's been so wonderful to be with us, but we do have to wrap up. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists who joined us today. The presentations were wonderful. The discussion was rich, and I can say that I personally enjoyed it a great deal. Thank you so much to the team at the Columbia Global Centers, the Columbia World Projects, Columbia College, and the Center for Undergraduate Global Engagement. We want to extend a very special thanks to all the collaboratory students, particularly the 2 students who asked questions. Thank you for your wonderful questions, as well as the other participants who joined us from around the world. We were so glad that you were with us today. Just a reminder that the link to the recording will be posted to those people who have registered if you want to watch anything again. And we hope some of you will join us at the next 2 seminars in this series. I threw a link in the chat if you're looking for information on what the topics are that we're going to cover. The fourth one is going to be on the solution space, which we touched a lot on specifically today, but it seems like there are a lot of people who were interested in that. So I hope if that was what you're passionate about, that you will be with us again. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, evening, whatever time zone you're in, and we'll see you online again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.